So guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. Hope you guys are staying safe. Canelo Alvarez. There's a lot of talk about Canelo and Beterbiev. I know that Canelo's fighting Bivol, but if he wants to unify and become undisputed, I think he's going to have to come across Artur Beterbiev at some point in his career. Now, Artur Beterbiev is a monster, and Chris Mannix said that he feels that Artur Beterbiev will be too powerful and too strong for Canelo Alvarez. That might well be the case. I think that's one fight that I'm not confident that Canelo wins. That I think Beterbiev is an animal. I do. I think some of you guys underestimate how good Beterbiev is. I think that's a very, very tough fight. You know, I've been watching some of Beterbiev's fights as amateur, and watching Beterbiev's fights as a pro. This guy's scary. He is a proper fighter. Proper fighter's fighter. You know, I really like that fight. Honestly, I think stylistically it's a beautiful fight. You know, that for me is an upgraded version of a Gennady Golovkin. That is a serious fight. What a fight that would be. I think that could be really bloody. A lot of punches thrown, a lot of, you know, I wouldn't even be surprised if Canelo has to get himself off the canvas in that fight. You know, that could be a possibility, because Beterbiev is a serious... Because for me, Beterbiev has the kind of physique that Canelo has, but bigger. He's built like a house. He doesn't have Canelo's chin, and he doesn't have Canelo's defense. The only problem is, though, is that Canelo's defense is... You can penetrate Canelo's defense if you put pressure on him. And that's the issue that I'm going to have. When watching Beterbiev, I think Beterbiev can walk Canelo down, and then that slick defense that Canelo has is good at a distance. But when you get close to Canelo, all of a sudden it's not as easy for Canelo to avoid those punches, especially if he's being pushed back and he's on the back foot. And Beterbiev will put Canelo on the back foot. I can't see Canelo not being able to, or Canelo ain't going to stop Beterbiev. Like, I do think that Beterbiev's got to be careful, because I do think Canelo has dangerous power. But if Canelo can't hurt Beterbiev, and Beterbiev's able to absorb Canelo's shots, which, listen, he may be able to, because of the fact that he's a bigger man, he's a stronger man, you know, so he may be able to absorb Canelo's power. Then Canelo's got a big issue, because Beterbiev can push Canelo back, and then all of a sudden Canelo's slick defense that he has isn't going to be as slick, because Beterbiev is going to be penetrating Canelo's defense. You know, honestly, that fight for me is a bit like Joshua Wilder. The only difference is I don't think someone's going to get put to sleep in that fight. I think both guys, like, obviously they're not as big, they're not as vulnerable. I think both of these are better fighters. But though that is a dynamite fight. That is a dynamite fight for me. I think it's a tough one. It's a tough one for me. Very, very tough fight. Very, very tough fight. Very tough fight for Canelo. And this is what I mean. If Canelo fights Beterbiev, you got to respect it. You got to respect his hustle. And you got to respect him looking to take on someone like Beterbiev, because that is a really, really tough fight. Honestly. That fight could go against Canelo. But it's one that people would want. It's one that I think eventually is going to happen. I do think Canelo will fight Beterbiev down the line. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it's a great fight. I think stylistically it's a great fight. Now, Bob Arum said stylistically Bivol Beterbiev's not a great fight. I actually disagree, because, you know, you've got a boxer mover against a pressure hard-hitting fighter. See, the problem is with a lot of pressure fighters, some pressure fighters like Porter are very reckless. The difference is between guys like Porter. Firstly, Porter's not a big puncher, and he's quite reckless as well. He throws a lot of wild shots at times, even though over the years Porter's got better at that. I think early on in his career, when he fought the likes of Brook, and I think Porter was a lot more reckless in his approach. I think he became better as his career moved on. but Porter wasn't a big puncher. I think there's certain pressure fighters. Like Maidana was a pressure fighter, but Maidana as well was a bit wild, but he was a puncher, so that made him more dangerous than someone like Porter. But guys like Golovkin and Beterbiev, what makes them dangerous is that they're hard-hitting pressure fighters, but they're very technically sound fighters as well. So they're not wild. They throw very technically sound. They're very technically sound, the way they throw their punches, you know, and that makes them even more dangerous because that makes them more accurate, more precise with their punches. And that makes them more dangerous because they're hard hitting and they're throwing correct shots. They're throwing accurate shots. They're not throwing wild shots. They're not throwing and hoping. They know that their shots are going to land. And that's what makes guys like Golovkin and Beterbiev a level above. That their pressure fighting ability is on another level. Because they're not reckless. They're throwing very precise punches. That accurate punches. And they're hard hitting as well. They're very technically sound fighters. Whereas you got guys like Porter who weren't technically very sound. A lot of wild shots. Maidana the same. Maidana had power. He was just a brute force Maidana was. But these guys have brute force, power, and they're technically sound. They're always in position to land their shots. You know, they put you in uncomfortable positions. Their IQ's good. And that's what makes them dangerous. That's what makes guys like Golovkin and Beterbiev dangerous. Because it's not just the relentless approach, it's the accuracy of their punches, it's the fact that they're always in position to punch, they're always on top of you, they're always putting you in comfortable positions. And that's what, for me, makes them very dangerous. So, I think Beterbiev is that guy, I do. I think Beterbiev is definitely a problem. I really like that fight. I do. So we're just going to have to wait and see how it plays out. But yeah, I think Beterbiev-Canelo is a fight that definitely is going to happen down the road. Whether it happens in the next year, Canelo, if he beats Bivol, he'll become a light heavyweight champion. Will then Canelo want to fight the winner? I think the winner of Smith and Beterbiev will hold the other three, so that becomes a very, very appealing fight for Canelo, because a win over the winner of that, he becomes undisputed at 175, and he'd do something in the sport of boxing that hasn't been done before. And again, he would have done it the hard way, because the chances are, if he beats Bivol, right, that would be an incredible win against a light heavyweight. And then the chances are Beterbiev's going to beat Smith. Beterbiev beats Smith, he'd be beating the two standout light heavyweights of this particular era, in my opinion. So Canelo again would enhance his legacy from there to there. And those, let's be honest, nobody really wants to see Canelo fight Smith. But if he wins against Beterbiev, of course, that's a fight that people want to see. But I think they definitely want to see him fight Beterbiev. So I think that's a great fight. I think what makes the light heavyweight division great is both guys are great at what they do. So Bivol is a very good mover and boxer. And he's the best at that in around these weight classes. So for me, Bivol is probably going to be the best guy that Canelo's fought in terms of that slick movement, fast feet, fast hands since Mayweather. I do. I think he's even better than Lara, because Lara was smaller, of course. I think we just have to wait and see. I think it's going to be really good. I do really think it's going to be really good. So yeah, I'm interested to see how it plays out with Bivol and Canelo. Yeah, so I think Beterbiev fight, is Beterbiev going to be too powerful, too strong? Possibly there is a possibility that that he may be too big, too strong. But we just have to wait and see. Because I do think Beterbiev is going to be the hardest fight for Canelo, just stylistically. I think Canelo's had issues with styles like that, as we saw with Golovkin. And I think Beterbiev is stronger. I think he's just as technically as sound. I think he punches harder than Golovkin, possibly. He's bigger, so the chances are he is going to be hitting harder. So that's a fight that really excites me, really interests me. I think that could go the other way. I do. I think I'm really looking forward to Canelo fighting Beterbiev in the future. But I do think the longer Canelo waits, the more it suits him, because I think Beterbiev is old. So I think the more he's going to decline, and the greater chance Canelo. I favour Canelo to beat him 52-48 kind of fight. I think it's very close, or maybe 51-49. I'm not confident though. I think he's the only guy that I'm not confident that Canelo beats from 175 to 160. But leave your thoughts, guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.